Are we ready? We are ready. Ladies and gentlemen, it is truly an honor for me to be here tonight with you. And I'm so happy all of you have joined us, taken time out of your schedules to come and to listen to the remarks prepared for you this evening. It is truly right and fitting that once a year the UN stops for 2 weeks and takes stock on the status of women. What is the status of women? How are we doing? How can we improve it? Are the policies of yesterday still good today? Is there more we can do? So it is right and it is fitting that every year we're here. My name is Susan Yoshihara. I'm the research director at CFAM, the Center for Family and Human Rights. And CFAM has been here for 17 years, following social policy and coming to the status of women. And so it gives us great pleasure to have speaking tonight the Archbishop, the Papal Nuncio here in New York, the Permanent Observer for the Holy See, Archbishop Bernardita Auza. When I was looking at the Archbishop's bio, I noticed he was ordained on the feast of Saints Peter and Paul.
Yes.
And you're coming up on your 30-year anniversary. That is an auspicious an auspicious pair of patrons who courageously not just spread the good news, but were willing to die for the truth. And the Archbishop, who comes from Talibon, Philippines, also entered the diplomatic service at a very tumultuous time in 1990, a new world order, and certainly one that has been anything but orderly. After serving in Madagascar, Bulgaria, Albania, and here at the UN, he was hand-selected to go to Haiti at a most difficult time there after the earthquake, and I think is well known for the difference he made there. And so it is no wonder that he was also selected to come to the UN at this time in our history. The Holy See has been a courageous defender of human life in the family, unwavering in its support for women, for children. And if I can quote something the Archbishop shared recently, the sanctity of human life and dignity of the human person is the foundation of Catholic teaching, which you preach in season and out of season. And earlier this year, addressing sexual violence and human trafficking, one of the most painful issues and difficult and important issues we face in this new world order, he quoted Pope Francis, who spoke against the culture of enslavement and for a culture of life. I'm so pleased that we're here to talk about that culture of life. Soon you'll also hear from the director of the International Youth Coalition, who will introduce our main speaker, Lila Rose, who will speak about that culture of life, what life means to women. But first, I am absolutely honored to turn over the floor and the microphone to a courageous defender of life, Your Excellency, Archbishop Bernardita Auza.
Thank you, Susan. My comments this evening will be brief because we have our distinguished and honored speaker for this evening. First of all, I would just like to welcome all of you to the United Nations. This is conference room number 1 for tonight's presentation, and the courage of so many young people are showing in the defense and the promotion of human life and dignity. I am sure that as activists in the March for Life, the annual March for Life in Washington, you know that the face of the crowd gets younger and younger every year. That demonstrates a greater awareness among the young people of the precious gift of life. We see so many young faces not only marching in the streets, but also in prayer services, in liturgies, and other forms of public witness. We behold them volunteering to care for pregnant women in difficulties, to care for elderly, and to volunteer even in faraway lands to help people in need. Scores of youth regularly cross not only the road, but cross continents in order to help lift up the poor and those in the margins of society. So many young people today stand up against what Pope Francis called a throwaway culture, in which even life is considered as a refuse. And this evening, you young people this evening represent this vast number of young people like you, who also, like you, are courageous and energetic and convinced to defend life in all its forms, from the womb to old age. These young and courageous people are signs of a springtime, we hope, of respect for the human person, and that fills us with hope. The courage these young people display, like you, in giving the selfless service and witness, encourage all of us. And there is a great need for this courage, because forming a culture that gives every human being the respect, the welcome, and the love each person deserves will never be quick or easy. It will require lots of patience and perseverance. It needs the grit to continue to stand up for those who have no standing, even when the temptation towards discouragement can set in and the headwinds are very strong. My dear young people, it can be tempting on occasion to become fixed in adversarial categories of us versus them, to write others off, to abandon hope of some people's ever-changing. But arm yourselves with love and mercy, friendship, and respect for all. And we can possess these virtues only if we ourselves work hard for our own personal conversion. Last month, Pope Francis sent a letter to the young people throughout the world in anticipation of the 30th World Youth Day this year, which will take place, as you know, on Palm Sunday. Our Pope, in this letter, repeated Jesus' challenge in the Sermon on the Mount for us to become pure of heart. The clean of heart, Jesus says, will see the Lord. The pure of heart see things differently. Pope Francis challenges us, therefore, to be able to discern and then to correct the things that defile our hearts and blur our vision, so that we can form our conscience rightly and sensibly, so that we will not fail to see the image of God in every human being, especially of those who are defenseless, of those who are in the margins of society, of those who are victims of injustice. Our fight for the precious gift of life is not limited to just one stage of life, for life itself is precious in all its stages, in all its phases, in all its forms. It is hard to keep an upright of heart and a clean conscience. It is more difficult than being just demonstrating or being in the streets. It's hard to strive to see and to reverence the image of God in every person, especially in those who don't behave like as if they are the children of God. But this is an essential work if we are going to help others to see the way God wants us to see everyone. Addressing the young people in the Philippines last January during the youth rally at the Catholic University in Manila, the Pope told them that the most important lesson that we have to learn in life is to learn how to love. That sounds not very Facebook, probably. It doesn't sound so trendy. But the most fundamental thing sometimes we cannot see. And that is why it is important for us to be reminded of these very fundamental things in life, because as all our spiritual writers would tell us, at the evening of life, at the twilight of our life, you will only be judged by one criterion, and that is love. Because it colors and determines everything you do in your life. We know everything practically. We are so full of information. Your Google will tell you everything. Just say Google it, and you'll have the information. And out of all this information, we have become like huge libraries. But we ask ourselves, have we become better persons because we are better informed than our parents or our grandparents? I think that's a question that every one of us would ask. Because as Pope Francis said, your stock of information, your being yourself a library, and even your courage and your energy to fight for just causes, they will only bear fruit if you know how to love and be expression of God's mercy to others. And that is why every fight for every just cause always carries with it the virtues of being always respectful, even of the adversary. My dear young people, this evening, I am a priest, so I sounded like a priest. Thank you for congratulating me on my 30th anniversary. Anyway, I just wanted to be here really to express my gratitude and that of the Pope for the witness of your courage and vitality. I have seen so many of you on TV in all these demonstrations, and I know how important it is for us also to be here and to be grateful and to encourage you. How important this bravery and youthfulness in protecting and fostering the most precious gift and the most fundamental human rights of all, and the most fundamental human right of all, namely life. Thank you and enjoy the conference. Oh.
Thank you, Excellency. And now I give to you Mark Kowaleski, the Director of the International Youth Coalition.
Susan, thank you very much, and Your Excellency, thank you for your words. My name is Mark Kowaleski, and I'm the Director of the International Youth Coalition. For the past several months, the 10 International Youth Coalition contributors have been researching and writing on a regular basis to inform their peers of the importance of defending human dignity, life, and the family throughout the world. From the moment of conception until birth, with the hope and goal to have all children raised by a mother and a father until adulthood, there is not a human person on the planet that falls outside of the Coalition's heart. This week, CFAM flew all IYC contributors from as far off as Australia and Argentina so they could speak out in defense of human dignity at the United Nations. It has truly been a pleasure to meet all of them in person, and after months of hard work, I would like them all to stand up so we could give them a round of applause. The International Youth Coalition was founded in 2010 to promote human dignity at the United Nations. Right around that time, I was serving in the United States Army, and President Obama had just repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, which barred open homosexuality in the military. Well, in my first mandatory diversity training following the repeal, it was obvious the intent of the training was not to teach love thy neighbor, but to push the radical LGBT agenda, that is lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. I also fully realized that the LGBT activists would use their foothold in the military to reach and drag down marriage. I walked out of the mandatory training and respectfully informed my chain of command that I would refuse to attend or order anyone else to attend any training that had the end goal of furthering the radical LGBT agenda into our military and our culture. I was first warned I could face court-martial and an other than honorable discharge. However, I continued to respectfully disagree, push back in a loving way, and not only did I end up being discharged honorably, but all references to homosexuality and sexual orientation were removed from my unit's diversity training for the remainder of my time in the military. It is so important to be loving, to be courageous, to make your voice be heard and to push back against a culture of death, or you can't expect positive change to take place. It's not going to be handed to you, and without question, that is true when it comes to the life issue. The silent screams of the unborn demand that we take action and let our voices be heard. St. John the Baptist, who joyfully left for life within the womb of his mother, courageously lost his life defending marriage before King Herod. The Venerable Fulton Sheen wrote about the Baptist, stating that he was too loving to not defend moral truth and to make an attempt to nudge the king on the right path, to set him right. The Baptist was too loving, so loving, that he put his life on the line for his fellow man, for King Herod, that he would hopefully awaken to what is true. Love. The Venerable Fulton Sheen, with his use of the word, lifts it to its rightful place as an act of moral courage. And it's so important to hear during this time when the word is so often dragged into the mud by Hollywood, the mainstream media, and organizations that promote the culture of death, such as Planned Parenthood and the radical LGBT organization known as the Human Rights Campaign. Lila Rose. She can't stop lifting the word love to its rightful place. Due to her immense love for children and the unborn, she founded Live Action, one of the most successful pro-life organizations around the world. Lila and her team at Live Action have shed further light on the deception and the brutality of the abortion industry, and she did it all before she could drive. When she was 15 years old, she was strategizing about how to bring down the horrific abortion industry and to save millions of lives because she was young and courageous, and life cannot wait. Lila is such an incredible example of courage and strength. And as horrible and as brutal as the abortion industry is, she gives me so much hope and faith that in good time we will see its demise. Ladies and gentlemen, with great pleasure, let us please give a warm welcome to Lila Rose.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Your Excellency, and Susan, and everyone here for being here. Even though we're here to discuss the most important issue, this very important issue of the status of women and now also the status of our children, I'm excited to see a lot of men in the room, so it's good that you've joined us because this is an issue that affects all of us. Women and our rights, human rights, these aren't just women's rights or men's rights or children's rights that we separate and we look at, but they're human rights, right, that bring us together. And so we're here to discuss the most fundamental human right, life, and also the threats that are being posed against those fundamental human rights. I'm delighted to join you. I came from D.C. earlier this morning and from California originally. I think I met some Californians earlier. Anyone here from California? There was someone. Are we alone? Well, we're run back there. Great. I know there are folks here from all over the world, which is wonderful. So we're here because we care about these issues. We're interested in these issues. And so I've come to speak with you from the perspective of someone doing work primarily in the United States, but with the understanding that the birthplace of abortion in the United States largely is here in New York City. One of the flagships of the largest abortion chain in our nation is the Margaret Sanger Center, within just 3 miles of where we are tonight. And so what happens and what the United States has done when it comes to children in the womb, when it comes to the way that women and our dignity and our motherhood is treated here does impact the rest of the world. And I also speak to many of you coming from other countries, asking for your forgiveness because of the way that my nation has exported a very violent and against the most innocent ideology to many countries across the world. So I want to first say that because there are some brave nations in the United Nations that have been battling for life in their countries, but they're too often ignored by some of the other voices like my country. So I want to start with that. But what I want to talk with you tonight is a few different areas. First of all, I want to talk to you about the most fundamental human right of life and why that is the first right, the most important right, and how it's under threat today. Then I want to talk to you about what I call the abortion mythology. And it's also a mythology about women and about what is uplifting and empowering for women and for the family, for men, for all of society. Some that have been told. I want to share with you some of the things that I have seen myself actually undercover in the abortion industry in this country, some of the things that our team has actually witnessed. I'm going to share with you one of those videos, and then I want to end with sharing with you how this is an issue that no matter where you came from, no matter your background, no matter your political positioning, no matter what nation you're from, what language you speak, this is an issue that we can all unite around. Because this is an issue that is talking about the weakest, the most defenseless, and it's an issue talking about the dignity of every human person. So to start off, I want to share a little anecdote. I was in California. This was a few years ago, and I was a student at UCLA, and I was going undercover, my first undercover investigation, because I wanted to do exposés of what was happening all across the country, starting in my town or my city of Los Angeles. I was a freshman in college. I was eager to find a way to expose some of the lies that I thought were being told. And so I started to do undercover work, and this would basically start my speaking and a lot of advocacy for many of the abuses that I saw undercover in the abortion industry, some of the things where I saw the cover-up of sexual abuse, the aiding and abetting of sex trafficking, the willingness to commit sex-selective abortions, a lot of horrific actions. And I was speaking one afternoon at a parish right by my school in Beverly Hills, so the very swanky. Has anyone been to Los Angeles? Few of us. It's a very swanky part of LA, and this is probably one of the wealthiest per capita churches. So the priest there must be doing something right because they was making a lot of money for the community and doing a lot of advocacy programs. But this parish, I was speaking in the parish hall, and in the middle of my talk, a woman walks in, and she's standing in the back, and she's staring at me with a very angry look on her face. And I remember thinking, I wonder who this woman is, why she's here. After my talk, she comes up to me. She's about 50 years old. She's tall, thin, blonde, very Los Angeles. And she shakes my hand, and she introduces herself as a member of the Planned Parenthood Federation of America's National Board of Directors. And as many of you may know in this room, Planned Parenthood is the biggest abortion chain in the United States, one of the biggest political proponents of abortion. I just stopped by a side event earlier where UNFPA was a sponsor, so there's a lot of activity internationally and nationally of Planned Parenthood. They have a lot of affiliates, a lot of networks internationally. They're constantly trying to push their pro-abortion agenda into countries like in Latin America, like in Africa, and I've been starting to do investigative work of many of their abortion clinics. So I meet this woman, and of course I said, well, hello, how are you? So nice to meet you. And the Planned Parenthood Federation of America board member says, well, hello, nice to meet you too. And I said, well, it's so good to see you here at the church. You know, you should come more often. I was wondering, how often does she come? And then, you know, the confessional is in the main area. No, I didn't say that. That's, of course, her own thing. But I said, well, it's so nice to meet you. How are you doing? And she said, young lady, I heard that you would be speaking. I saw a flyer, and I thought I had to come by and give you some advice as a mom. And I thought, first of all, as a mom, that she wanted to give me advice as a mom, when her work advocates the very violence, because truly, if you look at it clinically, medically, if you look at what it does to a life, it's an act of violence. She's advocating for the very violence that denies mothers their motherhood, that turns women against their own flesh and blood as somehow a form of empowerment. And so I said, well, what would that advice be? And she said, in the media and in your speeches, you have to stop saying the phrase pro-abortion. Say pro-choice. And I think, she came all the way here to tell me this, okay, in media training from Planned Parenthood. I said, well, why? What's so wrong with being for abortion, pro-abortion? Don't you support it? Don't you just support it through all 9 months? Don't you support it being paid for by the government? Don't you support it as a women's right? What's wrong with saying pro-abortion? And she said, well, it's a very difficult decision for a woman to make, so don't say that term. It's just difficult. And I said, well, why? What makes abortion so difficult for a woman? Why would it be difficult if this is somehow some empowering act that she made? She said, well, it's just an offensive term, so don't use it. Say pro-choice, it's more accurate. And I said, well, why? Why is abortion such an offensive, being pro-abortion such an offensive term? What's so offensive about abortion? And she said, well, it's very private for a woman, and it's something that is just for her to deal with. So saying pro-choice is more accurate. It talks about the different choices at bay. And I said, but why? Why is it such a difficult choice for a woman? And we went around in a circle, and we kept coming back. I said she'd use the word offensive, or she'd call it difficult, or she'd call it so private. And I kept asking why. What makes it so offensive? What makes it so difficult? What is so wrong, ultimately, with this term pro-abortion? And there was a lot of people gathering around at this point, and I thought, we're going to have this big fight here in the middle of the church. Then we need to both go to confession. No, anyways, I'm a Catholic convert, so I became Catholic 5 years ago after a long intellectual study of the faith and a lot of steps. So confession is still something I know it's something that Catholics like to joke about, but it really is a great thing. Anyways, so after this conversation with her, I left. We ended up leaving, parting ways. But I'll never forget my encounter with her and my encounter with many people since, because there's an abortion mythology that continued to come out. This idea that somehow this woman who thought she was advocating for the rights of women, and many at Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry think that they're advocating for the rights of women, for women's empowerment. They think that they're advocating for reproductive freedom, for justice, for all of these great sounding terms. When we actually look at what they're advocating for in the act of an abortion, they're advocating for the violence that denies millions of tiny little women their life in the womb across the world every year, and millions of tiny little men across the world every year. And I wonder, and I've seen in front of my eyes with some of these folks that I've talked to over the years, and some of the abortion workers that have actually left the abortion industry. I was just on a conference call a couple of weeks ago with a former Planned Parenthood manager named Ramona Trevino. There's others like Abby Johnson, who had an encounter with the humanity of the child, who after years of doubts that assailed them, doubts about maybe this isn't the best thing for women, maybe we can do better for women than killing our own flesh and blood. Maybe there's a better path. Maybe this is coercive. Maybe this is manipulative. Maybe this is a lie that we have been told, that we have been sold by powerful interests, by powerful political interests, by powerful sometimes business interests, because a lot of money is made off of abortion, at least in my country. It's a multi-hundreds of millions of dollars industry in my nation. And the thought process starts to change. But I want to tackle some of those things. But first of all, the reason I got involved in this whole fight, I see it as a battle for life, as a fight to expose lies that are being told, is because I had an encounter when I was very young with the humanity of the child. I think once you understand and once you recognize what science and what reason tells us about life in the womb, that all of a sudden you see the humanity of the child. I think there's a big push to not talk about the child. There's a big push to kind of separate it from the woman. There's that phrase that says, your body, your choice, right? Or my body, my choice. A lot of pro-abortion advocates will say that. And what they're saying is, well, it's my body, this body inside my body is my body, therefore I can do with it as I please. But what that has actually done, besides completely denying what science and reason tells us about unique, individual, newly forming life inside the womb, is that it puts the burden of that child completely on the woman. Because society is telling that woman, your body, your choice. Society is telling that woman, you take care of it, you deal with it. If you get pregnant, your body, your choice, take care of it. And so it's been used as a tool, abortion has been used as a tool to tell women, okay, you're pregnant, if you want to advance in your career, if you want to stay with the boyfriend who wants you to have an abortion, if you want to continue at university, you better get an abortion because at the end of the day, you have to deal with this. And the support structures are not there. Instead, we turn to abortion as an answer. We turn to abortion as a solution. And when I was a young girl, and when I was about, just really a child, I came across a book in my parents' house which was called A Handbook on Abortion. In the middle, there were images. I was about 9 years old. I was looking for a book to read, and I was very curious about the term abortion. I wondered what it was. A lot of children, I think, when they find out about abortion, they're very disturbed by it. When they first have they're first told a little bit about it. So I'd heard of it, but I didn't really know what it was. And I opened this book, and it falls to the center, and there are these images. And I remember in shock and horror closing the book and pushing it away. I didn't want to keep looking at what I was looking at. And then gathering a little bit of that 9-year-old courage, I pulled the book back and I look again. And what I was looking at was the image of a child maybe 10 weeks old in the first trimester with newly forming arms and legs and a newly formed little face, who had been the victim of a first trimester suction abortion. And these abortions are 40 times, imagine a suction machine, 40 times as powerful as a household vacuum, inserted into the woman to destroy, in the process to destroy the life, sucking that child out. And I can see the humanity, because by the end of the first trimester, all the internal organs are present. You can see the arms and legs. You can see humanity. It's amazing how quickly the preborn child can grow. And seeing that image as a child was really what became a jump start for my activism in short years after, as a teenager, because I realized in a moment the humanity. I realized in a moment the destruction of that child. And then I wanted to find out more, and I discovered that, and some of you may already know this, in my country every day there's over 3,000 abortions every day. And for every abortion, keep in mind, there's a woman on the other side. There's a woman who's a survivor of that abortion. Sometimes abortion kills women in my country, even though we've said back alley abortions are a thing of the past. Now we're putting them in the medical clinics, but women are still dying from abortions because this is an unnatural, violent act against her as it is against a child. And then I found out over 1 million abortions a year. We've lost over 55 million children in the United States since it became legal in 1973. And all of these things hit me because I thought, if I care and I wanted to give my life to something meaningful, I think we all do, that's why we're here. We care about women, we care about human rights, we care about advancing, all of us together advancing and improving and achieving freedom so that we can live out the potential we each have. That's why we're here. We care about caring about that for other people. And I realized that if we don't treat the weakest members of our society with the respect that we want for ourselves, how is that justice? How is that equality? How is that upholding human rights? Blessed Mother Teresa, who's a Nobel Peace Prize winner and a hero of mine, and she's someone who was respected and loved for her work with the lepers and the lonely and the dying, the work with the hungry. And yet, Mother Teresa, whenever she had the opportunity, had very strong words to say about abortion. And she said this to a group of American politicians in the 90s. She directed this statement. She said that the greatest destroyer of peace in the world is the cry of the innocent unborn child. She called it the greatest destroyer of peace. Why would she say that? Because when you take the child who's in their weakest situation, their most dependent situation, the weakest members of our society, and you deny them their most fundamental human right, and that's denied by the people closest to them who should love them and who should protect them and who should fight for them, then you have a human rights issue a human rights crisis at the core of your society, and you cannot have peace. You cannot have the peace that you hunger for. And Mother Teresa understood that, and so she bravely stated that. And whenever she had the opportunity, she would state that again and again. So as a teenager recognizing all of this, and I think many of us here have some kind of recognition of this, I thought this is something I have to fight for. This is something that I have to stand for. And if I care about human rights, if I care about my nation, if I care about peace, then this is something I have to direct my attention to. And then, of course, as I started activism and I started doing work to educate, I realized all the lies that are being told. I mentioned abortion mythology. I want to get into that a little bit more. I mentioned your body, your choice. And what that's really saying to the woman is it's denying the life within her and saddling her entirely with the care, with the concern of that child, right? So it's been a tool that's been said, oh, women are empowered by this. Now they have control, autonomy over their bodies. And yet what it's doing is it's relegating the care, the concern for the future of the nation, which is children, to the woman. And you have to deal with it, it's telling her. And look at what's happened in my country because of that. And my country prides itself on our freedom and prides itself on our advancement and our civil rights battle for, first of all, to rid ourselves of slavery and then discrimination, and our battle for women's rights. And there's many talk about still fighting that battle. And yet, in all that talk that we tell the world and we tell ourselves, all those talks by folks like Hillary Clinton and the Speaker of the House, or former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and many others, all of this talk from leaders, including groups that claim to speak for women in my country, like Planned Parenthood, like NARA, like the National Organization for Women, there's a complete denial, a complete forgetfulness of what it means to be, and the beauty that it means to be a mother, and the gift that life is to society. And instead, children are pitted against their mothers, and there's an animosity that's created. And then that wedge is deepened because all of a sudden, it's your body, your choice, and women are the ones to deal with that. You look at what's happened in countries like Ireland. Ireland has fought for years to be abortion-free, one of the few nations remaining as abortion-free. And the Dublin Declaration, which states, is anyone familiar here with the Dublin Declaration? One of the common myths of the abortion industry, of the abortion lobby, is that somehow it's medically necessary for abortion, for the direct killing of a child. That somehow pregnancy can be part of a disease, or it can be a condition that needs to be treated, and therefore, if there's other conditions, you need to directly go in there and kill a child. And hundreds of OBGYNs, medical professionals in Dublin are speaking out against that fear in the medical community, the fear that's being pushed on women who come in and they have a condition. Maybe they're going to have diabetes or lupus, or they have some condition and they're pregnant, and the doctor says, well, just abort. The doctor won't look at the child as a second patient. So women, again, are pitted against their children in the medical setting. Meanwhile, in Ireland, for years, they've been demonstrating how you can love and care and treat both as patients. And yet, my country, this country, doesn't want to see the child as a second patient, and therefore shackles and adds to the woman an extra weight, that weight of the responsibility and the burden, that deadly choice that she's being forced to make by doctors all across the country who say, you need to have this abortion, of the child then that would be killed, and then what they have to think of and suffer with often, emotionally or psychologically, the trauma that can accompany it because of the abortion that they had. And so things like the Dublin Declaration are often silenced in conversations about the health of pregnant women, and silenced in conversations about the advancement of women who are pregnant, maybe in the workforce or in schools, and we're forgotten to treat two patients. It's another part of the abortion mythology. One of the things that, is anybody here from, I'm not sure, but from China by any chance? Do we have anyone here? Okay, one from China. Thank you for being here. One of the things that has been very disappointing about Planned Parenthood in the United States has been their complete rejection of banning sex-selective abortion. I'm not sure how many people are aware of this, but one of the challenges that we're facing in the United States and other countries across the world is what The Economist has called the war on baby girls. And there's over 100 million missing girls in the world today because of sex-selective abortion, killing off children in the womb, particularly little girls, because they're not seen as valuable as men, as valuable as boys. And this, I'm not sure this is even talked about in all of this entire conference. It needs to be a core issue because one of the biggest threats, the biggest killers of girls today, attacks on women today, is sex-selective abortion. And I want to show just a few, if we can pull up that video, just a few minutes of an investigation that we did on sex-selective abortion, showing how Planned Parenthood, as the biggest abortion provider in this country, helps to collaborate to do sex-selective abortions. And they're actually an organization that has fought against bans on sex-selective abortion. Even India, which has a problem with sex-selective abortion, has banned it. But the United States is one of the only countries in the world, up there with North Korea and Canada, which refuses to ban sex-selective abortion. And the reason for that is because groups like Planned Parenthood, which claim to speak for women, are the groups advocating on behalf of it. So we're going to watch a few minutes of this video now.
Over 100 million girls are missing today. These girls were victims of female gendercide, the targeting of females for extermination through infanticide, and most often the aborting of preborn girls just because they are girls. The Economist reports, the destruction is worse in China, but has spread far beyond. Even sections of America's population have distorted sex ratios. Gendercide exists on almost every continent. If experts are right and gendercide is taking place in our own backyard, what is being done to protect our girls from the most brutal form of discrimination, violent sex-selective abortion? In April 2012, Live Action investigated abortion clinics nationwide to discover what would happen when the clinic receives a blatant request for a sex-selective abortion of a baby girl. In the footage you are about to see, Live Action went undercover at Planned Parenthood in Austin, Texas.
Have a seat here. So, yes, you're pregnant.
That's what I thought, yeah.
And so, what are you leaning more towards? I see that you say that you want to terminate it with the girls, or you just wanted to continue the pregnancy in the meantime, or what?
Yeah, I think that would be the plan.
The abortion covers you up until 23 weeks.
Okay.
So it's a little over 5 months. Little.
Okay.
And usually at 5 months is usually when they detect, whether or not it's a boy or a girl.
I see.
So you would be like right Sometimes
there.
they can tell at 4. I mean, I've seen that happen, but it just depends.
Depends. Do you think I should go and just ask for an ultrasound and just not tell them that I'm going to terminate if it's a girl? Or I just feel like there's been some judgment for my...
I mean, to be honest with you, I would probably think so, just because, I mean, we've had even clinicians, regular doctors that actually have even told women, you can't go and terminate after you're 16 weeks, which is not true, but, a lot of doctors, they'll place judgment because of the fact that the brain is already developed, pretty much everything's already developed.
Yeah.
The brain is already developed, pretty much everything's already developed.
Yeah.
And then for you to go and terminate, usually we tell them, you don't actually have to say what you're going to go do. So I have actually applied for Medicaid, got on Medicaid as if I was going to continue my pregnancy. went through the OBGYN, and then me and my husband decided we're going to go ahead and terminate. We terminated, and I still stayed on Medicaid and just got on birth control. Right after I got on birth control, I just stopped using it.
Right.
I didn't even want it anymore.
And didn't use it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, so then I could, then we could probably, you're thinking like if we did that, we could probably get pregnant again soon after.
Oh yeah,
that?
I've had 2 abortions and I have 4 kids.
Okay, so, all right.
So I mean,
you're fine,
again,
yeah.
from experience,
Yeah.
no,
Okay.
there's nothing wrong with being pregnant immediately.
Okay.
Right afterwards.
All right. Okay. So these providers would be more, at least more open to me terminating. But do you think I still just shouldn't worry about telling them that I would be terminating if it's a girl? Just kind of just keep it quiet and then come here.
Yeah, I would probably, because more than likely they could even, I mean, they could even refuse to continue to see you if you're just going to terminate. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I see.
This is what you could take. Are you wanting to possibly get on pregnancy Medicaid to see if you can get like a...
Yeah, I'd like to try that.
I'm going to give you this too as well. This is what you would take to the Medicaid office. This is basically just proof of pregnancy.
Oh, good. Thank you. So then I'd want to schedule, try to schedule an ultrasound with an OB around then, and then I would still be able to come back here for a termination if it was a girl. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, you know, if you go and see an OBGYN, you know, pretty soon, and you do an ultrasound to see exactly how far along you are, then you can really detect, okay, this is how far along I am, this is when I need to, you know.
Yeah.
This is when I need, when I'll know whether or not it's a boy or girl.
Gotcha. Okay.
So again, you will be like 20 weeks. That's 5 months.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Okay.
That is really helpful. Thank you for
We're going to stop it there. This is one of a series of videos. It concludes with the woman saying, the Planned Parenthood worker saying, "We hope you get your boy," to the woman as she walks out. After the release of these videos, a series of them at different Planned Parenthood abortion facilities, advising or figuring out ways to use the system to determine the sex of the baby and then kill the child if it's a girl, there was a sex-selective abortion ban brought up in the House of Representatives in order to protect girls in the womb, and yet Planned Parenthood was on the forefront of fighting that ban and doing everything impossible to stop it because they wanted to protect the right to kill girls in the womb specifically. Again, we're one of the only countries in the world that allows this barbaric practice, and they're often of girls that are in the later term, so these are very late-term abortions, many of them, because that's when they can really determine. This is one of the easiest ways for them to determine the sex via ultrasound. This video is sort of a peek into some of what happens behind the scenes of so-called abortion advocates. I wanted to share one other video with you that's 3 minutes, and it shows a little peek of what's happened. I call it the Wild West of abortion in the United States. And again, this is top on the agenda, up there, very high on the agenda of many of the groups, even here at this time when we're all coming together to talk about the status of women, as somehow to promote the welfare of women, which is against a woman in every way. It's against a woman physically, it's against a woman emotionally, psychologically, it's against a woman's dignity to turn her against her flesh and blood. But keep that in mind as you watch this video, because all of the groups that are promoting abortion as somehow a form of empowerment, although it does anything but empower a woman doesn't walk into an abortion clinic feeling powerful. She walks into an abortion clinic feeling powerless. No woman wakes up and says, "I want to have an abortion today. It's my right and I'm going to go do it." They wake up and they think they need to have an abortion because they feel a pressure, or they feel they somehow are being told by society there's no other way for them to advance. I remember being in my health center undercover on another investigation at UCLA, which is this university that claims to promote equality. And I'm in the health center and I'm undercover as a student, I was a student, but I was saying that I thought I was pregnant. And the UCLA nurse said to me, point blank, that UCLA doesn't support women who are pregnant or help them necessarily, but that there were 2 abortionists that I could go see. And adoption was difficult, and I would embarrass my classmates if I was in the classroom and I was pregnant, and so therefore I should go get an abortion. She doesn't care about my future, my true choice. She cared about abortion, and that was her agenda for me. So as you watch this next video, think about all the groups that claim to speak for women, that claim to care for women, that claim to care for human rights, and yet this is the kind of thing that they're advocating for, and the manipulation and the lies that are being told to women in the clinics, as much as on media, on universities, lies about what abortion is, lies about how it may somehow be helpful to us, but also lies in clinics. So this is a sampling of some of the legal abortion clinics in our country, the ones that are being lobbied for and advocated for by many of the groups here. And we'll play that video now.
Well, in my heart and my mind, you know, life begins when the mother thinks it begins, not when anybody else thinks it begins. For some women, it's before they conceive. For some women, it's never. Even after they deliver, it's still a problem, not a baby.
At this point, does it have, like, all of its organs and all of that stuff? Like, is it already fully
It's not
developed?
fully developed.
Okay.
It doesn't even look like, a baby yet.
It doesn't?
Technically, it has its organs, it has parts, like we all have parts, but it's not done.
So, like, does it have a face or, like, all of that stuff? Or?
Yeah, kind of,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, that's what's developing into.
Right, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want you to torture yourself.
Really?
Cannot do a termination once it's outside of the body. Okay, he has to resuscitate it, and he has to send it to the hospital. That's the law.
Okay.
But that's why a termination is done inside. He does a termination inside, and then he removes the pregnancy.
So normally he just kills it inside, so that wouldn't be.
Well,
okay.
we don't use the word kill, but...
Oh,
yeah,
okay, or terminate.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you guys say terminate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just to make it like...
No, just because that's what's happening.
Yeah, we induce a demise, an intrauterine demise.
What does demise mean?
Death. We use a combination of suction and then real instruments to literally go in and grab and pull pieces out.
Okay, okay.
Maybe that's a little more graphic than I usually describe it.
So I'll have a dead baby in me?
For 3 days, yeah.
Will it start to decay or something?
No.
Oh.
So it's like putting meat in a crock pot, okay? It doesn't get broke, but it gets softer. It doesn't get infected or...
Okay,
You know.
so the dead baby in me is like meat in a crock pot.
Pretty much, yeah, kind of much.
All right, all right.
In a slow cooker.
To insert the injection, it's going straight into the sac and to the pregnancy. Okay, it's bottom down. It'll insert through the baby's bottom. Okay.
Okay,
if
so
it's head down, it'll be inserted through the head, the cranium.
And then it's just, I mean, like any shot, you know, like a flu shot or a vaccine, really.
Just like a flu shot or vaccine,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, and it's not like you and I, where when we get a flu shot, we're kind of, ooh, not that experience of anxiety and suffering is not, it's not capable of.
Okay.
And so that, I think, helps us all to feel more comfortable with this.
I'm not sure if there's anyone here, and I hope that there is, who may be in support of abortion, or maybe you're figuring out what you really think about this and how it relates to women and how you think women are impacted by this and what it does to women. And what I want to close with here is what unites us, because we're all here to discuss the status of women, to discuss threats to women. We're all here because we care about women. We care about not just women's rights, but we care about human rights, right? It's not that we're dividing rights here and there, but what unites us is our humanity. What unites us is our humanity, and to be human is enough. To be human is enough to secure us a place of respect and protection in any society. And I think anybody here at this time and all the different sessions that are being had would agree with that our humanity unites us, and that our dignity, our equal dignity before God, before the law, before each other, is what we share. And so what I want to leave you with is, as we struggle to ensure that women are treated with equal dignity and that they are advanced, especially in places where they are under threat, and I speak especially to the women here, that as we advocate for this, and the men who come on our behalf to advocate as well, that we don't make the mistake of, as we try to achieve our protection, try to achieve our advancement, of relegating a whole other people group, those that are even weaker than us and more vulnerable, our children, that we don't reject them and leave them behind, but instead we embrace a vision together that we can do better than abortion, that women deserve better than abortion, and that our children are not a threat but a gift. And that is part of the dignity and the beauty of our voice as women. Thank you so much for having me. I think we have just a few minutes for questions, so I'd love to answer any. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. If you want to ask a question, I think you push your microphone, so I'll call on anyone who has a question. Yes. 27. Is it red? I can repeat his question. Oh, number 71. Are you number 71?
Perfect.
Okay,
All right.
great,
Thank
great.
you. Sorry, my name is Ryan. I'm with the International Relations Students Association of McGill University in Montreal, where I can proudly say that we do support the women's right to choose in Canada. Now, I'm obviously not going to be able to change your mind or anyone else's minds here, and I want to just come and respect the process and, engage in an interactive dialogue. That is what the United Nations is about, and that's what we stand here to represent, a global community debating ideas that we have differences on. And I really do respect the idea that we're all here to support. Please allow me to finish. Now, I also want to say I do appreciate your support of women's rights and rights of children as well. My question is, a lot of the substantive debate has focused so far on the issues in the United States, and given your stance then, whereas we would often propose different suggestions, how would you address situations in, say, war-torn areas, such as Syria, where we often see either systematic or case-by-case bases of rape and sexual violence against women, where often they don't actually have the choice about whether or not they initiate pregnancy?
Great.
How would we then, either manage contraception in these war-torn areas?
Thank you. Great question. Couple things. First of all, as far as you're saying you support a woman's choice, I challenge those that have that mentality of we're supporting a woman's choice. What exactly are you supporting that women choose? And all that that entails, not just the violence it does to a child, but the impact it has on women and a society and the way that they're treated. So that's something that we all have to think very carefully about when we're considering these phrases like choice. As in regard to your question, one of the horrific things happening right now that's underreported by the media is the violence against minority and especially religious minorities in places like Syria, and sometimes the sexual violence. And as a result of some of this violence, you have children who are conceived because of war, children of war. And there's actually going to be some great stories told, I think tomorrow at 10:30. Where is it? At the CFAM office, about children of war. Children that are born of war and their rights. Because if your father is a rapist, if your father was someone who attacked your mother, you have rights and you deserve protection. And yet some of these women who give birth to children of war are being denied the care for those children because of the situation of their conception. I want to talk about rape, though, because I think your question implicated the question of, well, what about abortion in cases of rape? And this is a common question, rape or incest. That's a horrific situation if it were to happen, and it does happen to women, and sometimes very young women, because of the violence that they endure. And they deserve the support and the healing of their community. They deserve to be protected. The rapist, and in this case, maybe terrorists or those that are attacking them systematically, need to be held fully accountable, kept to justice. But do we take out the crime, the penalty for that crime, on the innocent third party that might be that child? And do we expect that the violence of an abortion will somehow be a path of healing for the violence and the trauma that that woman already endured? Is that fair for us to say to a woman who's been the victim of violence that the path to her healing is going to include another violence, not just against her body, but violence against an innocent third party, that child who may have been conceived? We need to think better and differently about victims of violence. Okay. 53? Who's 53? Are you 53? Okay, I think her light came on. Yes, go for it. $45? Yes, are you 45?
Okay.
Excellent.
Hi, I'm Jimena. I'm from Big Woman and NCFM. This is not like a kind of question. It's like exhorting people for all who is in favor of life, who is pro-life, to when we are in college or high school and see or got the news of a girl is pregnant, not to start whispering like, oh my God, she's pregnant. Like, no, we have to be supporting to that girl, because maybe it was an accident, maybe it was something that she didn't plan. We cannot start whispering and saying like, oh my gosh, she's pregnant. We have to start and support the girl, because she's bringing life to the earth. She's bringing hope. So if we are negative to that girl, she will go to like other ways to take the situation. But if we support that girl, maybe she could give birth to that boy or girl.
It's a beautiful point. I'll never forget, I have a friend who became pregnant, and she wasn't married. It was an accident. She wasn't expecting it. And she ended up having the baby very courageously. She wanted to care for her own child. She chose that. And people have said to her things like, you should have had an abortion. And now she has this child with her, and they say this to her face. So there's a cruelty in the way sometimes we treat mothers, especially young mothers, maybe single mothers, and we need to be very careful in our cultures, regardless of our background, that we welcome children and their mothers, that we make sure that no matter the circumstances of conception, no matter the circumstances that woman might be in, that we welcome her and the life with her. Because otherwise we do create the feeling of desperation that many women experience, where they're going into the abortion clinic because they feel they're going to be rejected. Rejected by their professors, rejected by their boyfriend, rejected by their church maybe. And so they feel that this is the only place for them to go. But we need to think higher and better and do better for our children and their mothers. I think we have time for one more question. In the back. Oh, 65.
Sorry. My name is Sophie. I'm from New York, Sophie Shorter. My question is that not only after a person has conceived a baby, that we should care about also this birth control hormone in the name of Depo-Provera that has been given out to people of color mainly throughout the world. And I know some of the progressive groups who advocate for reproductive rights have been behind that. Nothing has been done to defund the problem because it has 17 adverse effects to a point of having heart problem, blood clot, also initiating the creation of new HIV/AIDS in Africa, which is new cases. So it's a very important issue if we care about life in which we do, and we need to stop funding this program, and I appreciate very much what you do.
Thank you. It's such an important point that you're making. Thank you for making it, and I didn't have time to address it in my talk. There's so many aspects to this whole question of abortion and the way that women's reproduction abilities are looked at, right? The way that we approach them. And one of the things that I think is a shame, and it shows the elitism of many of those like in the West, particularly some of the wealthy people in the West. In my country, like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and other groups that are pushing certain agendas, is they create aid programs, and some of them are sponsored by the United Nations, for countries that are developing, and front on the list for their aid program, if they can't get abortion in because maybe the country says, no, we don't believe in killing as a solution, so they say, okay, we're going to send you a bunch of hormonal contraceptives, and that's going to help you thrive in your community. Instead of building schools, instead of microgrants to help women achieve economic success, instead of clean water and better living conditions, it's synthetic hormones, which pharmaceutical companies are making bank off of, and pushing them, and they cause all kinds of dangers to the woman and do not alleviate her from poverty, but instead are a Band-Aid that's even toxic to her body. So this is something, as an advocate for women's health, holistic health, it's something I'm very concerned about, and even groups in the United States have done studies on this. Even Vanity Fair had an investigation. Things like the Nuvo ring, other forms of hormonal contraception that have been proven as extremely dangerous, and yet similar cocktails of the same synthetic hormones are being pushed and sold by pharmaceutical companies, funded by governments, and pushed on development. And so it's a whole other area that deserves our study and then our advocacy to say that there are better solutions to managing and understanding our fertility instead of slapping it with synthetic hormones and treating it as some kind of a disease. I think we're all done for the night, but thank you all so much.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you all here on the panel for such powerful words and powerful witness, and for your encouragement for the rest of us to speak the truth in love. Thank you all for being here, and good night.